Wellington adjusted his silk tie as he stepped out of his black Mercedes onto the pristine driveway of his Manhattan estate. The December wind cut through the night air like a blade, carrying with it the promise of the year's first major snowstorm. At 42, had built his technology empire from nothing, turning a small software company into a billion-dollar corporation that employed thousands worldwide. Yet tonight, as he returned from another grueling board meeting, he felt the familiar weight of isolation that money could never quite lift. The Wellington mansion stood like a fortress against the darkening sky, its windows glowing warmly against the cold. Had purchased the property 5 years ago, not because he needed the space, but because success demanded certain symbols. The house staff maintained everything perfectly, from the manicured gardens to the spotless marble floors that reflected his footsteps as he entered the grand foyer. Sarah Johnson had worked for the Wellington household for 3 years, though rarely saw her. She arrived each morning before dawn and finished her duties well before he returned from his office in the city. At 28, Sarah carried herself with quiet dignity despite the challenges life had thrown her way. She supported her younger sister Maya, who was studying nursing at the local community college, and their elderly grandmother who required expensive medication for her diabetes. The job at the Wellington estate paid better than any position Sarah had held before, but it came with strict rules. The head housekeeper, Mrs., made it clear that staff should remain invisible to Mr. Wellington. Sarah took pride in her work, ensuring every room sparkled and every detail met the exacting standards of the household. She moved through the massive house like a ghost, polishing furniture, changing linens, and maintaining the perfection that expected but never acknowledged. On this particular evening, Sarah had stayed late to deep clean the library, a task that required moving heavy furniture and reaching high shelves. The work was exhausting, but the overtime pay would help cover Maya's textbooks for the spring semester. As the hours passed, Sarah felt her energy draining. The warmth of the house, combined with her fatigue, made her eyelids heavy. The snowstorm arrived earlier than predicted, blanketing the city in a thick white silence. Sarah finished her work around midnight, gathering her cleaning supplies and winter coat from the staff room near the kitchen. The bus that normally carried her home to the modest apartment she shared with Maya had stopped running hours ago due to the weather conditions. Sarah stood at the service entrance, watching the snow fall in thick sheets, knowing she faced a 3-mile walk through increasingly dangerous conditions. She had no choice but to begin the journey home. Each step through the deepening snow drained more of her remaining strength. The wind howled around her, cutting through her thin coat and chilling her to the bone. Sarah's lips turned blue, and her fingers became numb despite her gloves. The streetlights created small circles of visibility in the swirling white darkness, but the spaces between them seemed to stretch forever. Halfway through her journey, Sarah's legs began to tremble from cold and exhaustion. She had been working 14-hour days for the past week, picking up extra shifts to earn money for Christmas presents for Maya and their grandmother. The combination of overwork and exposure to the bitter cold began to overwhelm her body's defenses. When she could walk no further, Sarah sought shelter beside a small park near the estate district. She curled up against a stone wall, trying to preserve what little body heat remained. The snow continued to fall, gradually covering her still form as she drifted into a dangerous sleep brought on by hypothermia. Had returned to his study after dinner, reviewing quarterly reports and planning for the next day's meetings. The storm outside provided a backdrop to his work, but he paid it little attention from the comfort of his climate-controlled office. Around 2 in the morning, he decided to take a brief walk through his home, a habit he had developed during stressful periods. As he passed a window overlooking the front grounds, something caught his attention. Through the swirling snow, he noticed a dark shape near the stone wall that bordered his property. At first, he assumed it was debris blown by the wind, but something about its form nagged at him. Grabbed a flashlight and his winter coat, stepping out into the brutal cold. The beam of light cut through the snow, revealing what he had seen from the window. His breath caught in his throat as he realized he was looking at a person, completely still and partially buried under the accumulating snow. He rushed forward, recognizing Sarah's face despite her blue lips and closed eyes. Had seen her in passing, but had never spoken directly to her, following the household protocol that maintained distance between employer and staff. Now, faced with her motionless form, all such considerations vanished. Sarah, can you hear me?" Knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face and checking for signs of life. Her breathing was shallow and her pulse weak, but she was alive. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, and carried her toward the house. The warmth of the mansion enveloped them as kicked the door shut behind him. He carried Sarah to the main sitting room, laying her gently on the leather sofa near the fireplace. Her clothes were soaked through, and her skin felt like ice against his hands. Had enough knowledge of hypothermia to know that warming her too quickly could be dangerous, but doing nothing would certainly be fatal. He called his personal physician, Dr. Martinez, who agreed to brave the storm to reach the estate. While waiting for medical help, carefully removed Sarah's wet coat and shoes, replacing them with warm blankets from the linen closet. He built up the fire in the fireplace and adjusted the room's temperature to provide gentle, gradual warming. As Sarah began to stir, found himself studying her face properly for the first time. Even in her weakened state, he could see the strength in her features, the determination that had carried her through years of hard work and responsibility. Her dark skin had regained some of its natural color, and her breathing had steadied. Dr. Martinez arrived within an hour, his own journey complicated by the storm conditions. After examining Sarah thoroughly, he confirmed that she would recover fully with proper care and rest. The hypothermia was serious but not life-threatening, thanks to quick intervention. "She's lucky you found her when you did," Dr. Martinez said as he packed his medical bag. "Another hour in those conditions could have been fatal. She needs warmth, rest, and monitoring for the next several hours." As the doctor departed, sat in a chair across from the sofa where Sarah slept peacefully under layers of warm blankets. For the first time in years, he found himself truly seeing someone else's struggle. The woman who had quietly maintained his home for 3 years had nearly died in the snow while walking home from work at his house. The irony was not lost on him. He owned multiple cars, had a full-time driver on call, and possessed more wealth than he could spend in several lifetimes. Yet the person who helped maintain his comfortable life had been reduced to walking through a dangerous snowstorm because she had no other option. As dawn approached and the storm began to weaken, made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He had been given a glimpse into a world of struggle that existed parallel to his own privileged existence, and he could no longer pretend it didn't matter. When Sarah finally opened her eyes, she found herself in surroundings that seemed impossible. The elegant sitting room, the crackling fireplace, and most shocking of all, Wellington sitting nearby with genuine concern written across his face. "Where am I?" Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold. "You're safe," replied, leaning forward in his chair. "You're in my home. I found you in the snow and brought you inside. Dr. Martinez says you're going to be fine, but you need to rest." Sarah tried to sit up, panic flooding her features as reality set in. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Wellington. I never meant to. I should go home. Maya will be worried, and I have work tomorrow." Sarah said gently, using her name for the first time. "You almost died tonight. You're not going anywhere until you're completely recovered, and we're going to have a long conversation about how this happened." The vulnerability in her eyes, combined with her immediate concern for others despite her own near-death experience, struck profoundly. Here was someone who had sacrificed her own safety for the sake of work and family, never asking for help or special consideration. "I don't understand," Sarah said, confusion evident in her voice. "Why did you save me?" Was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because I'm beginning to realize that I've been blind to a lot of things that should matter." As Sarah closed her eyes again, exhaustion overtaking her, began to formulate a plan that would address not just her immediate needs, but the broader issues that had led to this moment. Sarah woke to the aroma of fresh coffee and something she hadn't experienced in years, the luxury of sleeping until her body naturally decided to wake up. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden rectangles across Persian rugs that cost more than she earned in 6 months. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until the events of the previous night came flooding back. Had left early that morning for what he told his assistant would be a shortened day at the office. Before departing, he instructed the kitchen staff to prepare whatever Sarah might want for breakfast and to ensure she remained comfortable. Mrs., the head housekeeper, seemed bewildered by the sudden attention to a staff member, but carried out the orders without question. When Sarah finally emerged from the sitting room, still wrapped in the soft blankets had provided, she found herself face to face with Mrs., whose expression mixed concern with professional confusion. "Mr. Wellington left instructions that you're to rest today and eat whatever you'd like," Mrs. said, her tone carefully neutral. "He also said to tell you that he's arranged for someone to check on your sister and grandmother to make sure they know you're safe." Sarah's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. The fact that had thought to contact her family demonstrated a level of consideration she had never expected from her employer. "He did that." Yes, and he's asked to speak with you when he returns this afternoon, Mrs. continued. In the meantime, is there anything you need? The kitchen can prepare whatever you'd prefer. The kindness felt surreal to Sarah, who was accustomed to grabbing quick meals between cleaning tasks and rushing home to care for her family. She accepted a simple breakfast, eating slowly while processing the dramatic shift in her circumstances. Spent his morning in meetings, but found his attention constantly drifting to thoughts of Sarah and the conversation they needed to have. During a break between conferences, he placed several calls that would prove crucial to his emerging plan. First, he contacted a private investigator to discreetly gather information about Sarah's family situation. Next, he reached out to his personal attorney to discuss legal and financial structures that could help without creating obligation or embarrassment. By midday, had a comprehensive picture of Sarah's challenges. Her younger sister, Maya, was indeed studying nursing, but struggling with tuition payments despite working part-time at a local clinic. Their grandmother was managing diabetes with outdated medication because the newer, more effective treatments were beyond their financial reach. Sarah herself had been working multiple jobs before accepting the position at his estate, and even now supplemented her income with weekend cleaning work at a local office building. The depth of their struggle, contrasted with his own vast resources, crystallized something in his mind. This wasn't just about helping one employee. It was about understanding the vast inequality that existed in the world he had insulated himself from. When returned home that afternoon, he found Sarah in the kitchen, having insisted on helping the staff prepare dinner despite their protests that she should rest. Her natural inclination to work, even while recovering from hypothermia, spoke to a character that impressed him deeply. "Sarah, could I speak with you privately?" asked, his tone gentle but serious. They settled in his study, a room lined with leather-bound books and dominated by a mahogany desk that had belonged to his grandfather. Sarah perched nervously on the edge of an antique chair while took a seat across from her, deliberately avoiding the power dynamic that his usual position behind the desk would create. "First, I need to ask you something important," began. "Why didn't you call for help last night? Why didn't you ask to stay here until the storm passed or request transportation home?" Sarah looked down at her hands, uncomfortable with the direct attention. "It's not my place to ask for things like that, Mr. Wellington. The rules are clear about maintaining professional boundaries." "Whose rules?" Pressed gently. "Mrs. explained when I started working here that staff should remain invisible to the family, that we should complete our duties without bothering you with our problems or needs." Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. "I've always tried to follow those guidelines." Felt a surge of anger not at Sarah, but at the system he had unconsciously perpetuated. "Sarah, I want you to understand something clearly. Those rules nearly cost you your life last night, and they've cost me something too, the opportunity to know the people who make my life possible." He stood and walked to the window, gathering his thoughts before turning back to face her. "I've spent the day learning about your situation, and I hope you'll forgive the invasion of privacy, but I needed to understand the full scope of what happened last night. Sarah's expression grew wary. What do you mean? I know about Maya's nursing school struggles, about your grandmother's medical needs, about the extra jobs you work to make ends meet, said, watching her face carefully. I know that you've been carrying a burden that would crush most people, and you've done it without complaint or asking for help. Tears began to form in Sarah's eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't want charity, Mr. Wellington. I work for everything my family has. I know you do, and that's exactly why I want to make you an offer, said, returning to his seat. But first, I need you to understand that this isn't charity. This is me recognizing value that I've been blind to. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Sarah, you've maintained my home flawlessly for 3 years. You've worked with integrity, dedication, and skill. Last night, I realized that I've been treating you as invisible when you should have been recognized as invaluable. Paused, allowing his words to sink in. I want to offer you a new position, not as a maid, but as my household manager. You would oversee all domestic operations, manage the other staff, and work directly with me on ensuring this house runs smoothly. The salary would be substantially higher, and it would come with benefits including health insurance for you and your family. Sarah stared at him in shock. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because last night taught me that the way I've been living is fundamentally wrong, admitted. I've isolated myself from the people around me and created artificial barriers that serve no one. You have skills and qualities that any business would value: organization, attention to detail, reliability, integrity. The only difference is that you've been using those skills to clean my house instead of running a department. He stood again, beginning to pace as his enthusiasm for the idea grew. With the increased salary, Maya could focus on her studies without working part-time. Your grandmother could afford the medications she needs, and you could pursue educational opportunities if you're interested. I'll cover any courses or training you want to take. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what was offering. Finally, she looked up at him with tears now flowing freely. Why are you being so kind to me? What do you expect in return? Sat back down, his expression growing serious. Sarah, I expect nothing more than the same dedication and integrity you've already shown. The difference is that now I want to recognize and reward those qualities properly. As for why, he paused, searching for the right words. Because finding you in that snow made me realize that I've been living in a way that's completely disconnected from basic human decency. He gestured around the opulent study. I have more money than I can spend in several lifetimes, yet the person who helps maintain my daily comfort was walking through a blizzard because she couldn't afford alternative transportation. That's not just wrong, it's unconscionable. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I need to think about this. It's so much more than I ever expected. Of course, said immediately. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, I've already arranged for a car service to take you home safely tonight, and the same service will bring you to work for as long as you need it. No one should have to risk their life getting to and from their job. As they concluded their conversation, felt a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for years. Building his business empire had provided financial security and social status, but it had also isolated him from meaningful human connections. Sarah's near-death experience had cracked open something in his heart that he hadn't realized was closed. That evening, as Sarah reunited with Maya and their grandmother in their modest apartment, she shared the details of his offer. Maya's reaction was immediate excitement about the possibilities for their family, while with the wisdom of her 73 years, urged caution. Said, holding Sarah's hands in her weathered ones, "This man saved your life, and now he offers to change our lives. But remember that gifts often come with strings attached. Be careful not to lose yourself in gratitude." Sarah nodded, understanding her grandmother's concern. Yet something in his demeanor had convinced her that his offer was genuine. The way he had spoken about recognizing value rather than providing charity suggested a perspective that went beyond typical employer-employee relationships. Over the following days, Sarah observed with new eyes during her regular work hours. She noticed how he greeted other staff members by name, asked about their families, and began making small changes to household policies that improved working conditions. The transformation seemed genuine, not performative. A week after their conversation, Sarah requested another meeting with. This time, she approached him with confidence rather than nervous uncertainty. "Mr. Wellington, I've decided to accept your offer," she said, standing straight and meeting his eyes directly. "But I have some conditions of my own." Smiled, impressed by her newfound assertiveness. "I'm listening." "I want to earn this position, not just receive it because of what happened that night," Sarah said firmly. "I'd like to spend a month learning about household management, budgeting, staff coordination, and any other skills I'll need. I want to prove that I can handle the responsibilities before the salary increase takes effect." "That's not necessary, Sarah. I already know you have the capabilities." "It's necessary for me," she insisted. "I need to know that I deserve this opportunity based on my abilities, not your sympathy." Felt a deep respect for her position. "Agreed. We'll structure it as a training period, and I'll arrange for you to work with professional household managers from other estates to develop your skills." "Thank you," Sarah said, then hesitated before continuing. "There's one more thing. I want to understand your business better. If I'm going to manage your household effectively, I should understand the pressures and demands of your work life." Was surprised by the request, but recognized the intelligence behind it. "That's actually an excellent point. Understanding the broader context would definitely help you anticipate needs and manage the household more effectively." As they shook hands to formalize their agreement, both and Sarah felt the beginning of something that transcended traditional employer-employee relationships. They were building a partnership based on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. The transformation had begun, not just in Sarah's circumstances, but in his understanding of what it meant to live a life connected to the humanity around him. The woman he had found dying in the 6 months later, the Wellington estate operated with a harmony and efficiency that amazed everyone who witnessed it. Sarah had transformed from an invisible cleaning staff member into a confident household manager who coordinated everything from staff schedules to social events with remarkable skill. Her natural organizational abilities, combined with formal training in management and budgeting, had created a system that exceeded even high expectations. The change in Sarah was dramatic but authentic. She carried herself with new confidence, wore professional attire that had insisted on providing, and spoke with the authority of someone who had earned her position through demonstrated competence. Maya had completed her nursing program with honors and was now working at a prestigious hospital, no longer burdened by financial stress. Their grandmother's health had improved significantly with access to proper medications and regular medical care. Found himself looking forward to his daily discussions with Sarah about household operations, but their conversations increasingly moved beyond logistics to topics of mutual interest. He discovered that Sarah had an intuitive understanding of human nature that made her insights valuable in ways he hadn't anticipated. "The new gardener isn't working out," Sarah reported during one of their morning meetings in study. "He's technically competent, but he treats the indoor staff dismissively. It's affecting morale." Looked up from his tablet, impressed by Sarah's attention to interpersonal dynamics. "What do you recommend?" "I'd like to have a conversation with him about respect and teamwork," Sarah said confidently. "If that doesn't resolve the issue, we should find someone who shares our values about treating all staff members with dignity." "Our values," repeated, noting her use of the plural pronoun. "When did you start thinking of this as a shared enterprise?" Sarah smiled, no longer intimidated by his direct questions. "When you showed me that my opinions and observations actually matter. This house runs better when everyone feels valued and respected. That's not just good management, it's good humanity." The transformation extended beyond the household staff, had begun implementing similar principles in his business operations, recognizing that the leadership lessons he was learning at home could improve his corporate culture. Employee satisfaction at Wellington Technologies had increased dramatically as he began treating workers as valuable individuals rather than interchangeable resources. One evening in early autumn, received an unexpected phone call that would test everything he and Sarah had built together. His estranged brother David, who had been living abroad for 15 years after a bitter dispute over their father's will, was returning to New York and wanted to meet. David Wellington had always resented business success and had left the country after losing a legal battle over their inheritance. His return now, when was at the height of his wealth and influence, suggested motivations that made wary. "I think he's planning something," confided to Sarah as they walked through the estate's gardens the next morning. "David never contacts me unless he wants something, and his timing is suspicious." Sarah listened thoughtfully before responding. "Have you considered that people can change? You've transformed dramatically in the past 6 months. Maybe he has too." "That's generous of you, but you don't know David," said. "He's manipulative and vindictive. When we were children, he would befriend my friends just to turn them against me later." Then approach the meeting with caution but not prejudgment, Sarah advised. You'll learn his intentions quickly enough, but giving him a chance to surprise you costs you nothing. Was struck by the wisdom in her counsel. The woman who had once been afraid to speak to him was now providing guidance that helped him navigate complex personal situations. When David arrived at the estate 3 days later, the contrast between the brothers was immediately apparent. Where had developed a warmth and genuine interest in others, David retained the calculating coldness that had characterized their relationship since childhood. He surveyed the house with obvious envy, making comments clearly designed to provoke. "Still playing Lord of the Manor, I see," David said as gave him a tour of the renovated spaces. "Some things never change." "Actually, everything has changed," replied calmly, "but you'll see that for yourself." The test came during dinner when David deliberately spoke rudely to the staff members serving them. Sarah entered the dining room to coordinate the evening service and witnessed David making disparaging comments about the help, knowing their place. "Excuse me," Sarah said firmly, stepping forward. "I'm Sarah Johnson, the household manager. I believe we haven't been introduced properly." David looked up with amused condescension. "The household manager? How pretentious. When did start giving fancy titles to the cleaning lady?" The room fell silent, tensed, ready to intervene, but Sarah handled the situation with grace and strength that impressed everyone present. "I manage all domestic operations for Mr. Wellington," Sarah said with calm dignity. "That includes ensuring all staff and guests are treated with appropriate respect. Perhaps you'd prefer to continue this conversation in a more constructive manner." David's sneer deepened. "I don't take instruction from servants, regardless of their invented titles." Stood immediately. "David, that's enough. Sarah deserves your respect, as does every member of this household. If you can't manage basic courtesy, this dinner is over." "Oh, I see what this is," David said with cruel insight. "My successful brother has developed feelings for the help. How charmingly democratic of you." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Felt his carefully controlled temper begin to slip, but Sarah's presence reminded him of the man he had become versus the man he used to be. "Sarah is one of the most capable and impressive people I've ever met," said steadily. "She's earned her position through merit and has improved every aspect of how this household operates. If you can't recognize and respect that, then you haven't changed as much as I hoped." David's visit ended abruptly when he realized that his attempts to create division had only strengthened resolve. Before leaving, he made threats about challenging business decisions and spreading rumors about inappropriate relationships with employees. After David's departure, found Sarah in the kitchen, calmly directing the cleaning staff as if nothing unusual had occurred. Her composure in the face of David's deliberate cruelty impressed him deeply. "I'm sorry about that," said when they were alone. "David was trying to provoke a reaction and I let him get to me." "Actually, you handled it perfectly," Sarah replied. "You defended what's right without letting anger control your response. 6 months ago, how would you have reacted?" considered the question honestly. I probably would have either ignored his behavior entirely or exploded in anger. Both responses would have made the situation worse. Exactly. You've learned to value people properly and defend those values when challenged. That's real growth. As they talked, realized that his feelings for Sarah had indeed evolved beyond professional respect. Her strength, intelligence, and integrity had earned his admiration in ways that had nothing to do with employer-employee dynamics. But he also understood that any romantic relationship would fundamentally alter the partnership they had built. The resolution came 2 weeks later when Sarah requested a private meeting, expected to discuss household business, but instead found her prepared to address the elephant in the room. "I need to talk to you about what your brother said," Sarah began directly. "About your feelings for me." Felt his heart rate increase. "Sarah, I want you to know that regardless of my personal feelings, they will never affect your position here or create any pressure for you." "I know that," she said with the confidence she had developed over the months. "But I also need you to know that my feelings have changed too. You're not the same man who found me in the snow, just as I'm not the same woman who was afraid to speak to you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We've built something together that's based on mutual respect and shared values. If we're going to explore whether that could become something more, we need to do it honestly and carefully." I felt a surge of hope combined with respect for her directness. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we take time to explore our feelings while maintaining the professional relationship that works so well," Sarah said. "No rushing, no dramatic changes, just honest communication about where this might lead." Over the following months, their relationship evolved naturally from professional partnership to genuine friendship to something deeper. They discovered shared interests in literature, philosophy, and social justice. Their conversations ranged from household management to global politics to personal dreams they had never shared with anyone else. Learned that Sarah had always wanted to pursue higher education, but had been forced to work instead of attending college. He arranged for her to audit business and management courses at the local university, not as charity, but as professional development that benefited them both. Sarah helped understand the broader implications of wealth inequality and social responsibility. Their discussions led to the creation of a foundation focused on educational opportunities for working families, with Sarah serving as its director. 1 year after finding Sarah in the snow, proposed to her in the same garden where they had first discussed David's visit. The proposal was simple and genuine, reflecting the authentic relationship they had built together. "I love the woman you are and the woman you're becoming," said as he knelt with a ring that was elegant but not ostentatious. "I love your strength, your intelligence, your compassion, and your integrity. Will you marry me?" Sarah's acceptance was immediate and joyful. "Yes, because you've shown me that love based on mutual respect and shared values is worth any challenge we might face." Their wedding 6 months later was attended by family, friends, and staff members who had witnessed their remarkable journey. Maya served as maid of honor, gave Sarah a grandmother's blessing, and even Mrs. admitted that she had never seen two people more perfectly suited for each other. David's attempts to create business problems had backfired spectacularly. When employees and business partners around a leader, they had come to respect for his fairness and integrity. Wellington Technologies had become a model for corporate social responsibility, implementing policies that supported working families throughout the organization. As and Sarah danced at their reception, they reflected on the chain of events that had brought them together. A snowstorm that could have ended in tragedy had instead become the catalyst for transformations that neither could have imagined. "Do you ever think about that night?" Sarah asked as they swayed to music played by a quartet that included several musicians from the local community college. "Every day," replied. "Finding you in the snow didn't just save your life, it saved mine too. I was living in isolation, surrounded by wealth but disconnected from anything meaningful. And I was so focused on survival that I couldn't imagine anything beyond just getting through each day," Sarah added. "You showed me that I could dream bigger and work towards something beyond mere survival." Their marriage represented more than a romantic partnership. It symbolized the possibility of bridging social and economic divides through genuine human connection and mutual respect. Sarah continued managing their household with the same excellence she had always demonstrated, but now as an equal partner in all decisions. The foundation they created together provided scholarships, job training, and support services for working families throughout the city. Their success inspired other wealthy individuals to examine their own relationships with the people who made their comfortable lives possible. Maya became a charge nurse at the hospital and eventually married a doctor she met through her work. Lived to see great playing in the gardens of the estate where Sarah had once worked as an invisible servant. And Sarah's story became known throughout their community, not as a fairy tale romance, but as an example of how crisis can reveal character and create opportunities for profound positive change. They proved that genuine transformation is possible when people are willing to see past social barriers and recognize the fundamental humanity in everyone around them. Years later, when they told their own children about how they met, they emphasized not the dramatic rescue in the snow, but the daily choices to treat each other with respect, kindness, and recognition of each other's worth. The snowstorm had brought them together, but their love had been built through countless moments of choosing to value each other's dignity and potential. Their legacy extended far beyond their personal happiness. The changes implemented in his business practices created better working conditions for thousands of employees. The foundation Sarah directed helped hundreds of families achieve educational and economic stability. Their marriage demonstrated that love based on mutual respect and shared values could overcome any social barrier. The woman who had once been invisible had become the center of a transformation that touched countless lives. The man who had isolated himself behind walls of wealth had learned that true richness came from authentic human connections. Together, they proved that the most profound changes often begin with simple acts of human kindness and recognition of each other's inherent worth. Snow was becoming the catalyst for changes that would ripple far beyond the walls of his Manhattan estate. Built his fortune by identifying problems and creating solutions. And he was about to apply those same skills to a challenge far more personal and meaningful than any business venture he had ever undertaken.